the firmament, and the puzzles of creation. The morning somehow didn't start off right. Polina had intended to ride her scooter, jump on the trampoline with a friend in the yard, and walk her grandparents at the playground before they left for home. But as soon as she began to wake up, even before she opened her eyes, she suddenly heard the sound of water, droplets hitting the windowsill. Well, the rain ruined all her plans and dreams. She came out of the room in tears and immediately asked her mother the most difficult question. Why did this rain have to come exactly today? Why does it always fall when it's not needed, when it only gets in the way and no one expects it? Her mother wasn't particularly fond of the rain either, so she softly said, "Well, that happens. It's the weather, and it can be different. Maybe the sky decided to give everyone a shower today. We can go see how umbrellas and raincoats are coming back into fashion." The mother tried to cheer up the sullen girl, but seeing that Polina continued to frown, said, "You know what? Go to your grandfather. Let him tell you about a time when there was never any rain on earth at all." The idea of there being no rain intrigued Polina, so she slowly trudged to the kitchen, continuing to sniffle and sob. "Well, you have to win over the elders, right?" "Hello, little one," the grandfather said kindly. "I see you have a big trouble with your eyes all wet. What happened?" "Grandpa, is it true that there was never rain once?" Polina asked sourly. The grandfather pondered and replied, "Yes, back then there really was a lot of things that didn't exist." And then he added dreamily, "And a lot of things that did." "Well, sit down, I'll tell you." They both sat down on the soft sofa. Polina sobbed for the last time, and the grandfather began his story. "Do you remember how you asked about how light appeared in the world? And then we talked about how it was created by a kind and wise God." "Yes, I remember," Polina answered. "He also made it very fast and colorful, like a rainbow." "Right, you remembered well," the grandfather confirmed. "That was the first day of creation when God just began to create our earth. And what you're interested in today is related to the second day of creation. Are you ready?" "Ready," Polina answered, a little more cheerful. "On the second day of creation, God created a very interesting thing. He created the firmament." "What did God create?" Polina asked. She didn't understand what it was, so she added, "And what is the firmament?" "Well, how can I explain it to you?" The grandfather settled in more comfortably. "It could also be said that it's like a dome, which scientists later called by a smart word, the atmosphere. Just imagine, our planet is like a big house, and the atmosphere, or this dome, is like a big fluffy blanket that our home is wrapped in. The atmosphere consists of the air we breathe and that surrounds us, although we don't see it because it's transparent." "What do you think? Who else lives in this atmosphere besides us humans?" Pola pondered for a moment, then answered, "Various animals, trees, birds flying." "Right," said the grandfather. "The atmosphere is very important for all living creatures on our planet, even if they live in water, such as fish or dolphins. And of course, everyone who lives on land and in the air. For example, do you know how high some birds can fly? There is a bird called the bar-headed goose, and it can rise to almost 9 kilometers. The grandfather looked into the girl's serious eyes and asked, "Do you know how much 9 kilometers is?" Pola smiled shyly and answered, "A lot, probably." "That's a lot. Probably saw how high in the sky a small airplane flies and leaves behind a trail of white smoke. In fact, the plane is very big, but because it flies so high, we see only a small dot. So, the plane flies there at that altitude of 9 kilometers. Well, maybe a little higher. And there at such a height a small bird can fly. Because there, so high, there is an atmosphere." "And now, the most interesting part," the grandfather said mysteriously. "The Bible says that when God created the firmament, or this dome or atmosphere, he thus divided the water. Some water remained on the earth, and other water God raised high above the earth. There, where the atmosphere ends." Pola looked at her grandfather skeptically. "And how could it stay up there and not fall?" "Of course, when you go to school, you will learn much more about the laws of physics. But even now, you know some of them well. The laws of physics. These are rules that always work under certain conditions. If it is cold outside in winter, what does water turn into?" "Into ice," Polinka answered. "Right," said the grandfather. "And if spring comes and it gets warm, then the ice turns back into water again." Pola continued to share her observations. So God, when he created our earth, he always used such rules, which we call the laws of physics. Many of them we know, and many we do not. But God divided the water, and around the atmosphere, a layer of water was formed around the entire earth. And one more thing you will learn well later. If you spin a wheel fast, it loses its weight and becomes much lighter. So, the water that was divided by the atmosphere and was on top could also rotate quickly, so it did not fall to the earth. We cannot understand everything, but this is what is written in the Bible. And that layer of water did not let harmful sun rays through. After all, sun rays are not only useful, but also not very beneficial. When you come to the sea with your parents, what does your mom do when you go to the beach? She applies cream on us and Dad, so we don't get sunburned. You see, continued the grandfather, sometimes sun rays can be harmful. But when God created the firmament, the water that was above did not let these harmful sun rays through. That's one thing. And the second, what upset you so much today? There was no rain on earth. Pola looked skeptically at her grandfather. And nowhere, 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 and never, never, never. Yes, nowhere and never, the grandfather answered. Instead of rain, the earth was lavishly covered with dew in the mornings, as if all the plants were washing themselves. Therefore, the grass was always green, there was no cold or winter. Birds always sang cheerfully, and there were very many different delicious fruits around. But why does it rain now, and it gets cold and very hot? Pola asked sadly. Because once a very big disaster happened on Earth. There was a terrible flood, and all the water that was on top poured out onto the earth and completely flooded it. And since then, rains began, and winter and cold appeared on earth, and in the summer, strong heat appeared. But we will talk about this later. Pola looked out the window into the yard. The rain was falling with good enthusiasm and inspiration. Thunder rumbled. Big puddles appeared. Mud was imminent. She sighed. It must have been nice when the water was where God placed it, even in such a complicated and not entirely understandable way.